Okay. All right. So, hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure today for me to introduce our speaker, Professor Maryam Al-Shehhi, to our Monday seminar series. Just a brief background on Dr. Maryam's experiences. Dr. Maryam is currently faculty at Khalifa University. She received her bachelor's in chemical engineering from UAEU, and then she did a Master of Science in Water and Environmental Engineering at Masdar, and continued her PhD there, essentially in interdisciplinary engineering, under the mentorship of Dr. Hosni Gadira. Following a brief postdoc, I believe, at Khalifa University, she was a visiting assistant professor at MIT from 2018 to 2019. She then returned to Khalifa University and continued her research there. So her research interests include atmospheric modeling, particularly for dusty and desert environments, remote sensing using satellite imagery, and processing and monitoring phytoplankton activities in the marine environment, focusing on the region here, and also monitoring and characterizing harmful algal bloom, basically. So today's talk is going to be, I believe, focused on this latter aspect, so algal blooms. And this is actually quite a significant environmental issue. As we all know, these algal blooms are quite harmful and they can affect the marine environment, the fishes, and so on and so forth. And also, these are basically being affected by climate change. So her research, again, focused in this region, provides insight as to basically what is happening with respect to these harmful blooms and also how they're being affected by the change in environment. So with that in mind, let me welcome again Dr. Maryam to our seminar series. And now I give the screen to Professor Maryam.
Thank you, Professor Kourosh, for the introduction and for the invitation as well. And I'm glad to give today's lecture in the NYU lecture series. And today's talk will be about identifying the algal bloom hotspots in the Indian Ocean, and particularly in the northern Indian Ocean. So this work is part of the project with MIT, Professor John Marshall. So we are working on modeling the biogeochemical properties of the Gulf waters. And this study actually is part of the first early review of the algal bloom events that happens in the region. So as you can see here in the images, they are actually SEM images of some microscopic algal species that actually happen and exist in the waters in the Arabian Gulf. They are very beautiful, as you see them in the image over here. But if they overgrow, they are quite harmful. So that's why we are trying to study the effect of them in the Arabian Gulf. So I'm going to off my video and then. So first of all, I would like to define what are the algal blooms, and then explore the region, what is the Northern Indian Ocean that I would like to focus on. And after that, we look at the atmospheric and the oceanic processes that affect the algal blooms in this region, and also the distribution of the blooms in the Northern Indian Ocean. In addition, we will look at the distribution of them in terms of time and space. And after that, I'm going to show the hotspots of the Indian Ocean algal blooms in the last 5 decades. And then we also we will look at the types of the species that has been causing these algal blooms in the Indian Ocean. So first to start with is to define the algal bloom. So what is the algal bloom? For those who doesn't know what is algal bloom, so algal bloom basically is the overgrowth of phytoplankton species in the ocean. So the phytoplankton species, they exist in the ocean, but at certain concentrations, and they are very important in the food web that we are, depending on. But their overgrowth actually can cause some problems. So when these species basically, they overgrow and their concentration becomes so high, they can consume the oxygen that is in the water. So if they consume a lot of oxygen, then they cause the killing of the other marine life, like the fish and the mammals. In addition, these blooms, these species, if they exist at elevated concentration, they can affect the water quality of the ocean. For example, they can change the color of the water into different colors depending on the type of the species. So some of them turn the water into red color, into green color, blue color, and so on, depending on the type of the species. In addition, some of these species can be toxic, so they produce toxins, and these toxins can end up in the fish and then can be consumed by the communities in the region, and then it can poison the humans. So these are the major drawbacks of the algal blooms that actually has happened in the region in the Arabian Gulf. In addition, the problem has also extended to affect the coastal industrial areas, especially the desalination plants. So these blooms, when they end up into the filtration system of the desalination plants, they can block the filters, and also they can pass the filters and attack the membrane system inside the plant, especially in the reverse osmosis desalination plant. So they can block all the pores inside the membrane, and then they damage and disturb the membranes of the RO plants. And this has happened earlier in 2008, 2009, where about 3 plants has been suspended because of the blooms, and it has caused a shortage in the water supply for 3 months, especially in the Northern Emirates. And also recently we have noticed that there is a new coastal industry open, which is Baraka plant. It's a nuclear plant, and it's also one of their concern to monitor the water quality and protect the plant from the algal blooms. So that's why it's very significant and important to understand the blooms in the Arabian Gulf and try to mitigate this problem. So that's why the local entities like the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi and the Ministry of Climate Change, MOCA, they have set a plan after 2009, after the catastrophic event that has happened by that time. And now they have a very well-established plan to look at the algal blooms occurrence in the coastal areas. So in the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi, they have assigned 22 stations to monitor the blooms, while the Ministry of Climate Change, they have assigned around 10 sites to monitor the blooms in the Sea of Oman coastal line and also in the western coastal line of the Arabian Gulf. So if we look at the Arabian Gulf, so Arabian Gulf is dependent on the other seas like the Sea of Oman, Arabian Sea, and also on the Red Sea. So that's why in this study, actually, we focused on the full ecosystem, including these 4 subregions: the Arabian Gulf, um, Sea of Oman, Arabian Sea, and the Red Sea. So the objective of this study is to identify the most important oceanic and atmospheric processes that trigger the species in this region, including the 4 subregions, and also to evaluate the competing effects of the upwelling, sunlight, and dust deposition that are local to the regions where they appear. And we focus here again on the 4 subregions: the Red Sea, Arabian Gulf, Oman Sea, and also the Arabian Sea. So if we look now at the North Indian Ocean, so as I mentioned that we have looked at the 4 subregions. So starting from the left here in the map, we can see the Red Sea. So the Red Sea basically is located between Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Sudan. So the Red Sea basically is has the smallest surface area compared to the other seas. It has 0.4 million kilometers square, and the residence time of the Red Sea is 4.8 years. The second sub-region is the Arabian Gulf. So Arabian Gulf is the shallowest region, and its maximum depth of 90 meters. So it's in the center. But if you go to the southern part of the Arabian Gulf, it's very shallow. It can reach up to 5 meters. And if we look at the 2 other subregions, the Sea of Oman. So Sea of Oman is connected to the Arabian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. And there is a high difference between the depth between the Sea of Oman and the Arabian Gulf. So the Sea of Oman is much deeper than the shallow Arabian Gulf. So it can reach 3 kilometers of depth. However, the Arabian Sea is the deepest one and the biggest one in terms of the surface area, and it's very deep, extending to the south of the Indian Ocean, and it has a surface area of around 3.8 million kilometer square. So the main phenomena that happen in this region actually is the monsoons. So there are 2 monsoons that affect the region significantly in terms of the temperature of the water, the circulation of the water, and also the processes that happen in the ocean, in the water. So there are 2 monsoons. The first monsoon is the southwest monsoon that happened between June and September. So it's basically happen in the summer, and the other monsoon is the northeast monsoon that happened between December and April. So now, after knowing the region, if we look now at the history and see what are the historical records of the algal blooms in this region. So we found that the first bloom event that happened in the Arabian Sea along the Indian coastal line, it happened in 1908. However, it happened in the Red Sea in 1944. However, in the Sea of Oman and Arabian Gulf, it happened later. So in 1976, it occurred in the Sea of Oman, and it occurred in the Arabian Gulf in 1987. So you will see here like the differences in the occurrence of the algal bloom. So it happened first in the lower latitude, and then it reached the upper latitude in the later decades, I would say. So we have looked at this into more depth to see the distribution of the historical algal blooms over the decades. So we have collected the data recorded in this region for 5 decades, as you see here, between 1961 until 2010, to see the distribution of the blooms since then? How do they change? And what are the location and the seasons where they occur? So you can see here, starting from the first decade between 1961 to 1970, so it's indicated by the big X here. So in this decade, you see that the blooms basically were recorded in the lower latitude. So it is just along the coastal line of India, and it was in March to May. So it's in the northeast monsoon. It was also recorded in the southwest monsoon, and it was also in the similar areas in the lower latitudes of the near the Indian coastal line. However, after that, between 1971 to 1980, you will see that the blooms recorded being extended to a wider area. So you see here in June and August. So you see the blooms be recorded along the coastline of the India in similar location, but you can see them also in the center of the Arabian Sea and also along the Omani coast over here. They have been also seen in March and May, also in higher latitude, as well here near Pakistan in December and February. After that, between 1981 to 1990, you will notice that the distribution of the blooms has reached here, Sea of Oman, and also it have reached the Arabian Gulf. It's not only in the winter season, however, it has been also recorded in the summer season, as you can see here, and also here in the Sea of Oman and in the Red Sea. And after that, in the following decades, you see the blooms has been recorded in a wider area, and it has spread in all the region and at the 4 seasons. So it was not in particular seasons. So this data has been actually retrieved from all the literature that was done in the blooms in the last 5 decades. So this tells us something. It tells us that actually over time, the change of the climate has triggered the effect of the bloom and the productivity in the region. And you see that the blooms has been stronger and they spread wider in the last 2 decades compared to the previous old decades. So then we try to understand what are the processes that trigger these blooms. So first we look at the wind. Okay, so just on my screen, sorry. Okay, so first we have looked at the wind and how do they change in the northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon. So here in the figure, you see that the wind, they reverse in the direction in the northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon. And this is very significant in changing the circulation and upwelling in the Arabian Sea. So the wind in the northeast monsoon, basically, it is more focused on the western Arabian Sea, and the wind speed is between 4 to 8 meters per second. This is during the northeast monsoon. But in the southwest monsoon, the winds are stronger and extend over the major part of the Arabian Sea, as you can see here. In addition to the southwest and northeast monsoon's winds, there is also strong winds coming from the northwest here, and it's called Shamal winds. So it's stronger in the summer than in the winter. So during this monsoon, there is also a change in the sea surface temperature. So there is a significant drop of 2 degrees in the sea surface temperature, and that is in the Arabian Sea during the southwest monsoon. And there is also drop to a lesser extent of the sea surface temperature in the Sea of Oman of 0.5 to 1 degrees centigrade. So, but keeping the annual SST range between 24 to 31 in both regions in the Arabian Sea and the Sea of Oman. However, in the other two subregions, the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf, the waters are less affected by the southwest monsoon. So they have an annual cycle, sorry, reaching 31 in the summer or 32, and also dropping to 20 and 17 in the winter time. So if we look at the salinity of the region, so you must know that there is high evaporation and precipitation ratio in this region. So especially in the Arabian Gulf, the evaporation is very high, making the water very saline in this area. And this salinity can reach 70 in some places in the Arabian Gulf, and mostly they exceed 45 PSU. So the high saline water in the Red Sea and in the Arabian Gulf, they can flow into the Arabian Sea and flow into the Sea of Oman. So these high salinity, it leaves the Arabian Gulf at the upper surface of PSU of 36.5, especially during the northeast monsoon. However, sometimes the high saline water actually sink into the depth of 200 to 400 when it leaves the Arabian Gulf, going to the Sea of Oman at a depth between 200 to 400, and it affects the salinity of the Arabian Sea. So now if we compare the temperature and the salinity of the North Indian Ocean with the global ranges. So you see that here, this region basically has a temperature that is close to the other oceans here, like 50% of the ocean, they have this common temperature range here. So it's this is the average temperature, average annual temperature. And in addition, if we look at the salinity, so even the salinity of this region is comparable with the salinity of the oceans over here and this area. So what makes the North Indian Ocean storing a lot of phytoplankton species, or the blooms are very common in this region compared to the other region, if the salinity and the sea surface temperature or the temperature, it's pretty common with the other oceans. So there are other factors that make the blooms conductive in these regions. And these two factors basically are the nutrients and the sunlight. So we found that the nutrients, they are available in high concentration in this region, and also the plenty of sunlight that's available and trigger the blooms occurrence in this region. So regarding the nutrients, there are different sources of nutrients in the North Indian Ocean. So there are some natural sources of nutrients and anthropogenic sources of the nutrients. The natural sources of nutrients, it's come from the rivers and come from the dust storm deposition. So if we look at the rivers, now as a source of nutrients. So in this region here, we see that there are few rivers flowing into the Arabian Sea. So there is the Indus River. So this is the Indus River flowing into the Arabian Sea. And there is also the Liari River from Pakistan. And also we have here 4 rivers flow into the Arabian Gulf. But in the Red Sea, there is no river. So these rivers, basically, when they flow into the sea, they have and carry a lot of nutrients like the nitrate, phosphates, and silicates. And these nutrients, they can help the growth of the algae. So Indus has an average rate of more than 4,000 meters cubic per second, and it flows into the northern part of the Arabian Sea. There is also another river, which is the Liari River that runs from Pakistan with a lesser flow of 1,440 meter cubic per second. And the four rivers that are in the Arabian Gulf are the Shatt al-Arab, Hindijan, Haili, and Mand. So they provide continuous water flux into the northern part of the Arabian Gulf. So the flow of these rivers also they change seasonally. So for example, Indus River has a largest increase of the discharge in the summer and decrease in the winter, and the opposite habit to the Shatt al-Arab. So in addition to the river, which provides like the high nutrients to the water, the nutrients also comes from the other natural source, which is the dust storms. So dust storms, they peak in the northwest region, causing the thick, extensive dust plumes at an altitude of 3 to 4 kilometers in the Arabian Gulf, Red Sea, and the Sea of Oman. And this especially happens in the northeast monsoon. So the emission rates of dust can reach up to 2.4 teragram per day. And this emission of the dust is 5 to 6 times more than that of the southwest monsoon. However, the dust levels reach its peaks in the eastern part of the Arabian Sea during the southwest monsoon. So this is due to the heating, turbulent mixing, and strong winds coming from the Shamal. So you see here, there is a variability in the dust storms occurrence between the northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon and the location of these dust storms. So these dust storms, these dust storms are very significant to deliver the mineralogical nutrients, for example, the iron, and they can also balance the nutrients in the sea, especially in the Red Sea. They can also enhance the microbial productivity in the marine ecosystem and fertilize the water. So the dust storm would happen and when the dust particle get deposited into the sea, they can cause a rapid bloom. So the bloom happens directly just when the dust deposit, or there can be a lag period of 0 to 3 months. So after the dust storm happened and there is like few months pass, and then the response of the blooms can happen afterward. And this is especially apparent in the northern Arabian Gulf and the central Red Sea. And the time scale of the response of the blooms to happen after the dust storm is dependent also on the dose and the type of the carried nutrients. So there is the iron, copper, zinc, and nitrate. So all of them has different interaction with the ocean when they occur. So in addition to the natural sources of nutrients, which are the, again, the river and the dust storms, there is a third source of nutrients in the sea, which is from the anthropogenic sources. So the anthropogenic sources in this region, basically, it comes from the industrial effluents. So as you can see here, so the industrial effluents, it can be summarized in the brine discharge from the desalination plant. So although the plants are not happy with the blooms, they could be a part of the blooms, actually, part of the reason of the blooms to happen, because they discharge high amount of the brine, which is a heated effluent with a lot of chemicals. So this brine can change the chemical composition of the water and the temperature of the water. The second source of industrial effluents could be the pollutants from the oil refineries and the offshore oil operations in the Gulf, especially the Arabian Gulf is one of the high oil exporters to the world. So there are a lot of high traffic of oil tankers in the area. So a lot of oil incidents can happen and affect the composition of the water. There is also some general industrial and sewage effluents, and this can happen in the coast, or it can also happen in the rivers when they get discharged into the sea. In addition to that, there is also the another anthropogenic source of nutrients, which is from the ship waste. So you know that the ship, they can change the water. And this is called the ballast water when they just dump it into the sea, and it can bring a new biota into the region. And also this ship can spill a lot of chemicals, and some of the some of the the waste in the ship can be also dumped onto the water. In addition, reclamation and urban coastal projects, they have played a significant role in also changing the sediments in the coastal areas. So especially in the Arabian Gulf, so 40% of the Arabian Gulf coast has been developed with artificial islands and waterfront cities, ports and marinas. So all of this has affected the chemical composition and also has produced new nutrients into the water. So this is under the nutrients, which is the first factor of triggering the blooms in the region. The other important factor is the sunlight. So the sunlight actually is very important in this region. So the Northern Arabian Sea receives a maximum of around 320 watt per meter square during the month of April and May, and more than 280 is in the Sea of Oman in May. So lower levels of sunlight are received in the summer than the spring, and so it means that actually the sunlight in the Arabian Sea is stronger in the northeast monsoon, and the opposite in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. So in the Arabian Gulf, it experiences a different surface pattern. So it is similar to the North Atlantic, in which the shortwave radiation at the ocean surface reaches its maximum in the summer. So the maximum radiation actually it happens in the summer during the month of June and July, and the minimum is in the winter. So here we can see an map to show the distribution of the sunlight during the southwest monsoon and the northeast monsoon. So during the southwest monsoon, the sunlight is in the yellow area. So the highest sunlight radiation received is in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea and part of the northern part of the southern part of the Arabian Sea. However, in the northeast monsoon, the high sun radiation actually it appears in the Red Sea. And this is very important in the distribution of the blooms, because the blooms, they depend on the sunlight and the photosynthesis process. So this sunlight actually can help into the photosynthetic fixation, and they can also affect the surface mixed layer depth, and they can also play a significant role in the temperature profile of the sea. So this is the second important factor actually that regulate the growth of blooms into this ocean. In addition to that, so when the blooms occur or when the nutrients exist in some location, the oceanic movements and the dynamics can move the blooms and the nutrients to different places. So movements of algae and nutrients can be in a vertical motion or horizontal motion. In the vertical motion through the convective mixing or upwelling, the horizontal motion through advection, eddies, or the circulations. So if we look at the at first the vertical motion of the of the water. So the southwest monsoon and the northwest monsoons, they affect the upwelling distribution. So the southwest monsoon, it activates a lot of upwelling areas in the Arabian Sea, especially in the Arabian Sea. So you see the upwelling areas here near the coast of India, and here along the coast of Oman and Somalia, and also here near Pakistan. So these upwelling are very important to bring the nutrients from the deep water into the surface. And when the nutrients come into the surface, with the availability of the sunlight, they can produce the blooms. However, in the northeast monsoon, the upwelling is less strong compared to the southwest monsoon. So the upwelling can affect the mixed layer depth, and upwelling can also supply the nutrients such as phosphate, nitrate, silicate to the mixed layer, and it also can affect the sea surface temperature. So we found that upwelling is focused in different regions and in different seasons, as you can see here in the table. And also it's reflecting what is in the map. And if we look at the mixing, so we find that the mixing is stronger in the northeast monsoon compared to the southwest monsoon. So the mixing is stronger in the Arabian Sea, in the center of the Arabian Sea during the northeast monsoon. And also here, this area, just the southern part of the Arabian Sea. And also there is a strong mixing at the northern part of the Red Sea. However, the mixing is weaker during the southwest monsoon in the central part of the Arabian Sea, and also in the same places but with a lower intensity. So the mixing also have the same influence in this area by bringing the nutrients into the surface and also affecting the water temperature of the water column that help the growth of the algae in this region. In addition to that, we have also the advection. So the advection in the region, it means that the nutrients of blooms can move horizontally, and the horizontal movements of the bloom can be as mesoscale eddies or cyclonic, anticyclonic large eddies, or as local cyclonic eddies, or by the water currents. And we have found and spotted the location of these eddies and the season where they are strong. So after looking at all the factors that regulate the blooms and also the location of the blooms, we could find and identify the spots of the algal blooms in this region and what are the seasons where these blooms occur. So we found that in the southwest monsoon, there are 3 hotspots area indicated here by the red color. So location 1 is along the Indian coast over here, location 4 and location 6, which is in the Sea of Oman. So these blooms basically happen mostly commonly in the southwest monsoon. They do occur as well in the northeast monsoon, but with a lower intensity. However, in the northeast monsoon, we found there are around 8 locations of hotspots in the northeast monsoon, and the location of these hotspots are distributed over the coast of India and here near Pakistan, in the middle of the Sea of Oman and Arabian Sea, also inside the Gulf, the northern part of the Gulf, and also in the Red Sea. There are 2 locations. But it doesn't mean that this location is free of blooms in the other season. No, by this map, we are showing the intensity of the blooms in these seasons. So just to confirm with our finding with the satellite images. So we look at the satellite images, the climatology of the last 10 years, and we looked at the maximum chlorophyll A concentration during the northeast monsoon and during the southwest monsoon. And we saw the satellite images are comparable with the hotspot location that we found based on the data. So in the northeast monsoon, you will see that there is hotspots here in the middle of the Arabian Sea, northern part of it, and also in the Sea of Oman, in the southern center of the Red Sea, and also in the inside the Gulf region. However, in the southwest monsoon, you will see that the blooms are stronger here along the coast of the southern coast of Oman, as it is shown in our findings as well. And also here, higher blooms in the southern part of the Indian coast. And actually, we found the reason for each of these blooms to happen. So, and we summarized the cause and the season for these blooms to happen. In this table, for example, in location 1, the months of occurrence between August and November, and the cause of that is because of the upwelling advection. Location 4, which is here, so it occurs in both the summer and the winter season, and the reason for that, the weak winds and upwelling. If we look at location 5, for example, so in location 5 blooms happen in June, and it happens in the northeast monsoon mostly in May, November, December, and this is because of the advection of nutrients from Oman due to the mixing and advection from the Arabian coast in December. So if we look now at the location 2 and 3, for example, in the Arabian Sea, so location 2, the blooms happen mainly in October because of the southward advection of nutrients, in the February and May because of the highest solar radiation and the southward advection of nutrients and strong winds. So for each location, we are able to identify the reason for the blooms to happen. Similar thing, we found the causes of the blooms in the rest of the areas, 6 to 10, as you can see here in this table. And we found that basically the Arabian Gulf blooms, which happens in the winter, like we found that 50% of the blooms that happen in the winter is because of the advection from the Sea of Oman, and they have not grown really inside the Gulf water, but they have transported from the Sea of Oman. And if we look at the type of species that cause the blooms, so they are the list is big, but the most common species that causes the blooms, we found that they are Noctulica and Trichodesmium, in addition to the other species. So if we look at the Noctulica, for example, so the dinoflagellate Noctulica, they cause the blooms in wide areas of the Arabian Sea, Sea of Oman, also in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea, and they are mostly found in the eastern side and the least to the west. So Noctulica species, usually they live in the temperate, tropical, and polar water in the coastal and open oceans. And they can appear in different colors, like the red color and the green colors. So we try to find some events of Noctulica that happen in this region. And for example, here, these are satellite maps of Noctulica incidents that happen in different regions. For example, here, this Noctulica happened in the coastal line of the Arabian Gulf. And so the first law of the images show this incident, and the second image over here showing the chlorophyll A concentration. So chlorophyll A was very high in this event, reaching up to 20 milligram per meter cubic. And then what is the corresponding EOT, which is the aerosol optical thickness, and also bar, which is the photosynthetic active radiation. And we have done this analysis actually to study the relation between noctiluca and the dust deposition and also the sunlight radiation. And we found that noctiluca, they like to bloom actually in the upwelling areas. So where upwelling is, you see the noctiluca is there. And regarding the aerosol optical thickness, they actually exist when the aerosol optical thickness is high, so higher than 0.2. And if we look at the photosynthetic active radiation part, so noctiluca, they exist in the areas with par between 35 to 56. So that's why this high range of the PAR radiation between 35 and 56 makes noctiluca able to exist in both seasons, in the southwest monsoon and the northeast monsoons. So in addition to the noctiluca, the second species is the trichodesmium. The growth of trichodesmium, basically, they are considered to be a biological indication of stratification and nitrogen limitation. So these species, basically, they can exist in two forms. The first form is the tuft colonies, and the second one is the radial or the buff colonies. And they have a size exceeding 100 micrometer, and they can be seen with the naked eye if the abundance is too high. We have also looked at some trichodesmium case studies where the blooms has occurred. And for example, here the first row showing mirror satellite image of the incident of trichodesmium that happened in the southern part of India. And we looked also at the chlorophyll A and the aerosol optical thickness, which is the dust deposition here, and also the photosynthetic active radiation. So we found that trichodesmium likes to grow more in the areas with higher sun radiation. So the photosynthetic active radiation is much higher than that of the noctiluca. So that's why you see that trichodesmium, they are mostly growing in the area with plenty of sunlight and very quiet and very like when the surface is very, very stable. In addition, regarding the dust level of the trichodesmium's regions, so they can vary between 0.025 to 0.2 aerosol optical thickness regions. Yeah, so in conclusion, I would say that algal blooms have attracted much attention in the North Indian Ocean, and we are able to identify the locations of the algal blooms and the hotspots, and we found there are a total of 10 hotspots in the southwest monsoon and the northeast monsoon. And the growth of these species actually dependent on the nutrients which are brought by the dust storm river runoff, also by the dynamics of the water, like the upwelling, mixing, and advection. Upwelling occurs in the southwest monsoon and mixing occurs in the northeast monsoon. And we found that dust occurs in most of the regions in the northeast monsoon, which is contrary to common belief. We found that the sunlight radiation has higher intensity during the northeast monsoon in the Arabian Sea, compared to the southwest monsoon in the Arabian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. We also found that the blooms that dominate the algal blooms are the species that dominate the blooms are the noctiluca and the trichodesmium species. And each of these species have their own characteristics to grow. For example, noctiluca, they like to grow in the upwelling areas, and trichodesmium like to grow in the areas with high sun radiation and also very flat surface area. So these findings are very useful for to start our geochemical modeling of the Arabian Gulf, knowing that the seasons of the algal blooms that they like to grow, and also the location of the blooms, and also the effect of the atmospheric forcing, like the dust deposition and the solar radiation into the blooms and the productivity of this region. So that's it, and please let me know if you have any question.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Maryam, for this very interesting and informative presentation. We already have a couple of questions. Maybe the easiest is I read them. I think the first question is from Dr. Yusuf, who's asking if the bloom-causing algal species are detected early and the right conditions for spreading are in place, which of the causes you found in your study can be subject to intervention to reduce the extent of the bloom?
Sorry, but can you please repeat the question?
Sure. So let me paraphrase it. I can read it again, but maybe it's just easier if I sort of say what I think Yusuf is asking. If basically they can be detected early, which one of the several causes that you mentioned can be manipulated to basically reduce the extent of the bloom? Or
So
if there are any of them that can be manipulated?
yeah, so most of the factors that trigger the blooms actually natural. So like the dust storms and the rivers, and also the water circulations, upwelling. So all of them are natural phenomena that we cannot really control, but we can only control the anthropogenic sources of nutrients, so that we can reduce the blooms by reducing, for example, not really reducing, but putting policies to regulate the brine discharge, for example, into the region, and also the influence of the ship waste and these kind of anthropogenic sources. But apart from that, early monitoring is possible, but how to mitigate it or how to stop the blooms, that will be something beyond this study. And so the easiest thing to be done, for example, for the desalination plant, they can just temporary shutdown of the plants to protect the plants from the damage, because these membranes cost like 9% of the total cost of the plant. So if they just shut down for 1 day, they can save the plants from the bigger damage of it. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, it might be easier if people say their questions. I see Shadi has put a question. Is it possible to? Yeah. So Shadi, go ahead, please.
Hi, this was an interesting seminar. I just had a couple of questions. One, I noticed that you don't see any diatom blooms in the Arabian Sea, and I was wondering, does that indicate that the Arabian Sea is silicate limited? And the second question I had was that, you know, when you look at satellite pictures of chlorophyll all over the world, you see that almost all coastal areas have very high level of chlorophyll concentrations relative to the open ocean. And usually this is just due to high productivity in these areas. So I was wondering, at what point do you decide in your analysis that this high chlorophyll patch is really due to an actual bloom versus just high productivity area?
So because the blooms, the blooms occur as a response of the, as we said, the overgrowth of the species in these regions. So basically, the high chlorophyll concentration that you see in the satellite images, they are have been validated with the in situ measurements, and there has been a lot of bloom events occurred and a lot of samples being collected and confirming that these are blooms. So that's why if you see the satellite images, the high chlorophyll concentrations is basically reflecting that there are blooms in this area. It's not only because of the, it's not only high productivity. So it is high blooms. And this is also confirmed by the local entities that collect the samples in a monthly basis. And this measurement has been validated with some in situ measurements confirming that they are blooms and they are not really only high productivity. In addition, in the first map that I have shown, for example, in one of the slides, so let me go back to here. So the data is shown here, just a minute. For example, so this data collected from the literature is reflecting the locations of the blooms. So it's not only high chlorophyll concentration, but confirming the blooms in this region. So yeah.
Sorry, and the first part of my
actually, yeah.
You didn't show any diatom blooms at all in the Arabian Sea, and I was wondering if that has to do with any silicate limitation in the Arabian Sea.
Yeah, so actually, this could be the reason for the absence of diatoms in the Arabian Sea. But the other thing is that Noctolica actually they consumes also the silicate and the diatoms in the region. So this could be one of the reasons that diatoms has been actually always consumed by Noctolica, and the silicate also being consumed by the Noctolica, because we have a lot of Noctolica and extensive blooms in this region. So this could be one of the reasons.
Okay, I think now John has a question. So John, can you please?
Sure. So one of the questions I had, like obviously a lot of the focus has been on the anthropogenic and the upwelling sources of nutrients that are driving things. I'm curious if anyone has looked at the importance of freshwater runoff after rainfall events, particularly in mountainous areas like Fujairah, much of Oman, off of the Zagros Mountains, etc. Particularly for things like phosphorus, but obviously there'll be other things coming in with it as well.
Yeah, so the focus, as you said, that in this study, basically on the river runoff and the dust storm, in addition to the anthropogenic sources. So we haven't looked at any other sources of nutrients apart from that.
Have other people been exploring the role that freshwater runoff might play?
Sorry?
Have there been any others that are looking into the role that freshwater runoff might play out of the Wadain?
Not really. So in the literature, we did not find any studies looking at that, apart from looking at the dust deposition and river runoff, basically.
Okay. Yeah, because I can say from personal experience that I tend to see a lot of Noctiluca blooms after rainfall events on the East Coast. So it might be something worth exploring in the future.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, that's a good point to look at.
Okay, well, if there's no other question, let me thank Dr. Maryam again one more time for a wonderful presentation. And with that, I think we can end today's seminar. Thank you again.
Thanks. Thank you, Professor Kourosh. Thanks all.